When my mother dropped her coffee that morning, I thought she was just startled by the nightmare I told her I'd had. I had no idea the thing in my room wasn't a dream at all. My eyes struggled to adjust, searching the thick shadows of my room, and that's when I saw it. Her, standing by the wardrobe, a figure dressed in the simple, dark habit of a nun. My room was pitch black, yet I could see her silhouette perfectly, a void against the lesser dark. She was unnaturally still, a statue carved from night itself. But her habit, it wasn't still. It rippled and flowed around her, like dark water or smoke, even though there was no breeze. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum in the suffocating quiet. I tried to move, to sit up, to scream, but my body was locked down, a prisoner in my own bed, sleep paralysis. That's what my mind screamed. It had to be, but my eyes were wide open, and the cold was real. As I stared, frozen, her form shifted. A joint in her arm bent, but it bent the wrong way, backwards, with a faint, dry crack that echoed in the silence. Then she began to whisper. It wasn't a language I knew. It was ancient, guttural, a sound that seemed to crawl up from the very bedrock of the earth. Slowly, she began to move toward me. Her feet didn't seem to touch the floor. She glided, a horrifying, silent procession to the foot of my bed. A part of my brain, desperate for a rational explanation, tried to find peace. A nun. Nuns are holy. A protector. A guardian angel. Maybe my mind was projecting a symbol of safety in a moment of terror. But then the smell hit me. It wasn't incense or old books. It was the cloying, sweet stench of decay, of something left in the dark to rot for centuries. It filled my lungs, gagging me. Her whispers grew louder, twisting into a sick mockery of prayer. I could hear familiar Latin words, but they were inverted, spoken with a hateful hiss that curdled the air. Her face was still hidden in the deep shadow of her coif, a pit of absolute blackness. Her hands rose slowly, and I saw her fingers. They were too long, far too long, ending in nails that scraped softly against the fabric of her habit. The sound was like insects skittering on dry leaves. She was so close now, leaning over me, the cold radiating from her like a physical force. The lie I was telling myself, that she was holy, that she was here to help, shattered. This was not a blessing. Her head tilted, and the shadow shifted. The mask fell. Her face. It wasn't a face. The skin was pale and tight like dried parchment, but it was cracking, splitting open to reveal something dark and wet beneath. Her eyes were just pits, and a thick black fluid, like tar, wept from them, running in rivulets down her broken cheeks. And her mouth began to open. It stretched impossibly wide, unhinging at the jaw, wider and wider until it was a gaping, silent scream filled with rows of needle-thin teeth. I tried to scream. I pushed with every fiber of my being, but no sound came out. My throat was paralyzed, my lungs burning. The shadows on the walls began to writhe and crawl, no longer just an absence of light, but living things, reaching for me. The very room felt like it was breathing with her, contracting around me. This wasn't a nightmare. This was an invasion. The next thing I knew, it was morning. A soft, unnatural light filled the room. I was drenched in sweat, my body aching as if I'd been in a fight. The nun was gone. I stumbled out of my room and into the kitchen. My mother was there, humming softly as she made coffee. The scene was so normal, so painfully mundane, that I almost convinced myself it was all a terrible dream. "Mom," I said, my voice hoarse, "I had the worst nightmare. There was a nun in my room." The coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the tile floor. The color drained from her face. She stared at me, her eyes wide with a fear I had never seen before. "What did she look like?" she whispered. As I described the figure, the long fingers, the impossible joints, her hand went to her mouth. "No," she breathed. "It found a way out." She told me then. This house, our home, wasn't just a house. It was built over the sealed foundations of an old deconsecrated church. And beneath that church, in a hidden chamber, something had been bound long ago. An entity, Not a ghost, she said, but something older. Something that wore the guise of holiness to deceive. It wasn't destroyed, only imprisoned. And now, somehow, it was free. After that confession, the house turned against us. At night, we'd hear scratching from inside the walls, frantic and sharp. Whispers would follow us from room to room, just on the edge of hearing. I started noticing things in the mirrors. My reflection would be delayed by a split second, its movements lagging just behind my own. And sometimes, for just a flash, I would see her standing behind me in the glass. The entity wasn't just in my bedroom anymore. It was everywhere. The house itself had become its cage, and we were trapped inside with it. A few nights later, I knew it would end where it began. I walked back into my bedroom. It was cold again. The air was thick with that same smell of rot. I stood before the tall mirror on my wardrobe, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm of dread. I stared at my own reflection, at my pale, terrified face, and then she appeared behind me in the glass. She wasn't a silhouette this time. I could see the cracked skin, the black tears, the mouth that was a wound in reality. Her impossibly long fingers reached out and touched my shoulder in the reflection. A shock of icy cold shot through my real body. My skin felt like it was burning and freezing at the same time. I watched in the mirror, unable to move as my own eyes in the reflection turned solid black. A voice echoed in my head, not through my ears. It was her voice, ancient and possessive. "A vessel," it hissed. "I need a vessel." The reflection of her face pressed against the reflection of my own, and in the mirror we began to merge into one. If you've ever felt watched in your own home, if you've ever seen something from the corner of your eye that shouldn't be there, don't assume it's nothing. Be careful what you pray to in the dark. Because sometimes the things that come to us dressed as saints are the ones that want us the most. Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced something you can't explain. And subscribe for more stories from the dark.